Good morning, afternoon, evening, and welcome to Concerned Citizens Presents, a new offering on Village TV. Concerned Citizens of Laguna Woods is an organization committed to peace, social justice, economic equality, and a clean environment. For the duration of the lockdown, instead of its usual 2 meetings a month, Concerned Citizens will broadcast 2 programs a month on this channel. Our programs will feature films, lectures, and debates on topics related to our mission. We hope you enjoy today's program.
Welcome to Concerned Citizens Presents. My name is Suzanne Modell, and I co-chair the committee responsible for these broadcasts. Today, we have an unusual guest, Ngugi wa Thiong'o. Ngugi is a writer, a world-famous writer, who has won countless awards and honorary degrees. Baptized James Ngugi in Kenya in 1938, he was brought up under British rule, which meant that although his family did not speak English at home, he attended classes in English. In college, he majored in English literature, and for graduate school, he attended a university in England. Unsurprisingly, his early writings were in English. Around 1970, Ngugi had what might be called an anti-colonial epiphany. Influenced by writings critical of imperialism and capitalism, he abandoned Christianity, changed his name to Ngugi wa Thiong'o, and began writing in his native tongue, Gikuyu. In the 50 years since then, he has not changed course. In the late 70s, Ngugi's ideas, as expressed in a play he co-authored, so angered Kenyan authorities that he was jailed for a year. Upon his release, he felt sufficiently threatened that he left his homeland. He has lived abroad ever since, teaching literature at American universities. Currently, he is Distinguished Professor of Comparative Literature at the University of California, Irvine. Ngugi wa Thiong'o has written novels, plays, short stories, memoirs, and essays. His most recent publication, long listed for the International Booker Prize, is The Perfect Nine. Originally published in Gikuyu in 2018, the New Press has just issued a translation by Ngugi himself. The New Press, if you are not familiar with it, is a wonderful nonprofit publisher with a social justice mission. In The Perfect Nine, Ngugi uses the epic form to retell the origin myth of the Gikuyu people. To begin, we ask that he talk to us about his new work and perhaps read from it. Welcome, Ngugi wa Thiong'o.
Thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. And quite frankly, also for inviting me to talk with you about my writing in general, but in particular, the Perfect Nine in Gikuyu original, Keda Muiru, the Perfect Nine. Correctly, as you said, I wrote it in Gikuyu first, and then did my own translation into English, okay. First of all, just very interestingly, how did I come to write the epic? And I'll talk about the epic a little bit, and I'll read a little bit from it, but just a little bit of background, because it has something to do with the Pacific Ocean. Although it's about my origins, the origins of Gikuyu people in Kenya, but what prompted it were one of them was actually the Pacific Ocean. I was sitting my house. I work for the University of California, Irvine, and we are literally, UCI campus is literally 10 minutes from the Pacific Ocean. So you drive along the Pacific Highway towards Laguna Beach, you can enjoy the sight of the blue waters. And sometimes you can stop by and just walk about in any of the open spaces. So the one I stopped at one time was Crystal Cove, I think. And I'm sitting there enjoying the blue waters, you know how the process thinking is. I don't know why, it's because my mind began wandering. Pacific Ocean, Hawaii, the Pele Mountains, or rather the volcanic mountains in Hawaii, and they claim it is Pele, Pele, the god Pele. Now that reminds me of Kenya, where I come from, Mount Kenya, which was one of the two tallest mountains in Africa. The first one being Kilimanjaro in Tanzania, and then Kenya, and that mountain has, I think original volcanic, that's what I was thinking of Pele, and Gai is our name for God, Gai. So think about that, and the snow. The other thing about Mount Kenya is got a snow top. In other words, there's permanent snow on the top. And although it's on the equator, but somehow or other it defies the equator, and we have that permanent snow on Mount Kenya. Now, the Kikuyu people did not know what that permanent white spot was. So they thought it was the seat of God, okay? Yeah. Kire Nyaga, we call Gai Mwene Nyaga, the one who is the whiteness of an ostrich, okay? And the mountain, we say the mountain of ostrich whiteness, okay? Yeah. So Mwene Nyaga is he who is the whiteness of an ostrich, God. And Mount Kenya is also that which has a kind of ostrich whiteness, Nyaga is called, yeah. Which is our name now for snow as well, Nyaga, right? So I'm thinking about that, about Kenya and Mount Kenya. And that, of course, reminded me of the myth of origins of Gikuyu people. Kenya has many peoples, okay? Gikuyu people are among 22 other communities or peoples. I don't call them tribes, by the way. They are people like every other people in the world, okay? Right. So Gikuyu people are just one with their own language, Gikuyu, but we got many others with their own different languages. But we have a common language called Kiswahili, okay, which is both an African language, but also a kind of lingua franca. And then there's the official note, the official national language, which is English, which is spoken by only 10% of the people in each of the different communities. So shall we say 10% of Kenyans speak English, 90% speak their different African languages, but official business, administration, everything, education is all in English, okay, right? Yeah, what else can I tell you about it? So I was thinking, I was sitting up in the Pacific and I started thinking about my Mount Kenya, and our myth of origins, which says this, that the Gikuyu God once took the father of the Gikuyu people called Gikuyu and the mother called Mombi onto the mountain, okay, and he showed them all the land, and say, I bequeath you this land, you and your children. Yeah. Later, Gikuyu and Mombi had 9 daughters. Actually, there were 10, but the couple don't say, when they say 110, they say 9, full 9. So there's a difference between 9, Keda, and Keda Moyuru. Keda Moyuru is 10, right? So that's why I call it perfect 9 is 9, which you've been perfected to become 10, kind of. Right, yeah. Now, this was.
Could I ask you a little bit? That was one of my questions. I've heard you say this many times, Ngugi, and I don't fully understand it.
Okay, please.
So if somebody had 20 children, would they say that they had the perfect 19?
If they're 20, what do you say? Let me say, no, I think, no. If they would say, okay, the Gikuyu people seem to have had a problem in giving the exact figure of their children. They don't tell you that they've got 10 children. They might tell you they got 9.
This is like in China where people name their child, I don't know, doorbell, or they don't want to name the child as a child because the spirits might recognize.
Yeah, the same idea that you use.
Okay, thank you. That's what I wanted to understand. Please go ahead. Thanks for explaining that.
Yeah, the thinking is like this. If somebody evil comes to try to finish you as a family, you don't want them to know the exact number. So there's a chance of at least one surviving, okay? Yeah. Now there's a problem. Since they were the original man and woman, and they got 9 daughters, what happens to them when they come to the marrying age, right? So the original myth says that God goes back to the mountaintop, and God promises him suitors. And indeed, the following day when he wakes up, there were 9 or 10 handsome young men outside there. Now, my epic is like this. I began asking myself, I know the Gikuyu people don't say no matter what they do, they never say that they did it themselves. They always say, God enabled me, or God did it for me. God, all the time, guy. So if you arrive safely at a place, you say, God successfully brought me here in good health, right? So I knew then there must be a story behind the Gikuyu being on the mountaintop, okay? Yeah, that's one question. The other question, so I wanted to know, where did he come from? The second question was, if these girls were of marriageable age, where did the suitors really come from? True, they turned up and they could say, God brought them here, but they may well have come from somewhere else, okay? It does not matter, because whatever they came from, God brought them there, okay? So I was interested in where they came from. Yeah. That point, very, very important. Gikuyu, since they were of marriageable age, and they did not have brothers, okay? There was only one man, their father. Then who did all the work? of building, of making defense weapons, clothes, manufacturing. Who was doing all that? Okay, the women. So I said, oh my God. I saw them as women who are using the totality of their mind, totality of their hands and their heart. So I saw them as a union of the beauty of the hand, the mind, and soul together, right? Yeah. So I said to myself, the original feminists. Yeah, right. Yeah. So anyway, that's why I started thinking about the epic. So the epic itself is like this. Ikoyo and Mombi have 9, 10 daughters. They are of marriageable age, but their beauty is spread all over the continent by the wind and other invisible means, okay? So you get suitors who dream of this beauty. So they are driven by search for beauty from wherever in the continent they may be residing. In the end, 99 suitors turn up at the Ikoyo's place. How? And there are only 10 girls, right? 99 suitors, 10 girls. So Ikoyo tells them, okay, I'm going to give you a test. And the girls will choose for themselves. But you have to be tested. And the test is like this. They go back. Now, let me explain one more thing important for this. Among the 9 girls or 10 girls, there's one who is, how should I say, whose legs don't function as others. They're very, very weak. So she can only crawl. Okay, so she can't really join them to the mountain. Now, but there is a cure for that illness. And this is the hair that grows in the middle of the tongue of a man-eating ogre, right? So they're supposed to go there and pluck this hair, but this hair cures all, and they have to bring it, among other things.
But he's invisible.
Huh?
He's invisible.
Yeah, and he's invisible, yeah, and only the tongue. But you don't know how big he is, where he is, the location, anything, but the tongue. Come, yeah. The other thing, the girls have to accompany the 99, except for Warigia, the one with the one who crawls. Okay, she's there at home. The others go. Yeah. So whatever difficulties they pass through is a test of all of them equally. A test of the girls, a test of the men equally, right? Because the danger does not choose, these are women and these are men, they have to face the dangers equally. And the different characters emerge when they are faced with the difficulties. Anyway, in my epic, the only 9 men are able, 10 men survive the ordeal. And of course, the 9 girls. Yeah. So that's the really essence of the epic. Is based around that, yeah. And this is what came to me as I was sat in the Crystal Cove, watching the blue water of the Pacific Ocean, right? Yeah.
Do you want to read a little to us?
Yeah, I don't have the English version with me, but I'll tell you what. I'll tell you the page. Yeah. I'll read the opening paragraph for you to hear the sound of what I did was, this is my first attempt at an epic. you know. And the Gikuyu doesn't quite rhyme as well as, I don't know, but what works incredibly well in Gikuyu is alliteration. The musicality of Gikuyu language is in the repetition of certain sounds, right? And so I played around with that. In arranging the stanzas, I played the idea there were 9. So the lines are either 9 or multiples of 9, 3, 6, or 10, 5, you know. And of course, the 9 also is a period of, is a number of months any baby stays in their mother's belly, okay? Yeah. So in the epic, when they're very tired, they sleep. Sometimes they sleep for 9 months. When the men come from mountain, they're all tired, or exhausted, or whatever, and they sleep. They all sleep for 9 months. So I see when they wake up, you see they are born. I mean, I was playing the idea of birth and all. What I was doing. So the one I'm going to read to you is just opening verse only. When I'm playing around purely with sounds, well, you know, right? This is a narrator talking. Is Gogana, no, sorry. Gogana roa gikoyo na mombi. Ashiari aro shiaro keda moyuru. Ituge sia nyomba ya mobi. Meheregi, meherega keda. Rurera, rururu, moruru, wa muoyo, ke abirurere, o nangendo sia o. You know, that's just the opening verse. And it's, I mean, you may not hear, but it plays around with sounds. Oh, yeah. And in Gikuyu, it works very, very well. It's very, very musical. Yeah.
It sounds very musical.
Yeah.
Right.
English is not very good with alliteration. You do too much in English, it becomes almost impossible for the ear to, yeah. But with Gikuyu, it works very well. Yeah. So one more space I want to read to you. This when I start with the original man and woman, with the Gikuyu and Mombi, who are coming from somewhere toward the mountain, what they call the mountain of the moon, okay? And because the permanent snow on top of Mount Kenya, you know. So they too face also challenges before they come to the mountain. The man and woman face a lot of challenges, which they face together. But when they come to the mountain top, oh my God, the beauty around them, oh my God, it's like, yeah, the rivers, the animals, the beauty. And they don't have the words to express this beauty. So they both break into a song, which I'm going to try and sing, but please don't worry about my voice, okay? Yeah. He moene nyaga toakogada nio da koyo wakenga take teri oyo joe naire manyinge ona nyamo elemba menge mahoa maya niriri waku mete na nyamo hamwe na nyoni na shigoyo joine na diaine Sio besio de neriri waku. Toadikereria, toiwa mogambo. Waku ngayu kiwoda koyode. Wa toadera tora matawega. Kerolero riri waku muega. Yeah. They just sing because they don't have, yeah. They can only break into a song to express the beauty. And what they say essentially that everything is really expression of God. The birds, they are an expression of God. The rivers, they are the face of God. The animals, everything, the trees, they're talking about the oneness of creation. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Could I ask you? I'd like to ask you a couple of questions about the
Please,
poem,
yeah.
and then we'd like to talk a little also about politics and stuff like that, if that's okay.
Okay, no problem. Yeah.
But I wondered about a little about the symbolism of some of these images that you have, some of which are very striking. I'm thinking more actually of not the beauty, which is very striking, and the peacefulness, but actually the evil. There's evil under there. There are powers that are just waiting to trap the young men and the young women. And I was wondering, why did you, or maybe the story itself has the invisible man-eating ogre. What does that mean?
There's another type of ogre with it. Yeah, it's a type of ogre which in Ngiko, it's a very well-known character in Ngiko folktale with a tummy. Not a tummy, I think it's more like a basket, a size of basket which never fills up. Yeah. So no matter what, yeah, they are grabbing all the time. Okay.
Never stops.
Yeah, they never, their tummy, no matter how much they swallow.
Well, that sounds like some social constructions that I can think of.
Well, you can think of that of the god of profit, like, no, I'm not interpreting, but I'm just giving as an example. The way, if you look at our society today, whether America all over the world, the greed for profit, it does not matter what. It does not how much property one has. Whether you got a house in here and there and wherever, you still want one more, right? Right? You want aeroplane, not one, you want 2 or 3 or 4. You want car, no one car is not enough. It must be 5, 10. I mean, and you can only sleep on one bed at any one time. You can only eat one plate full of food at any one time. But the greed, really, this is affect the whole world. Yeah. And
right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I was thinking along those lines as I was reading those words. Okay. Well, we have some more time.
But the ogre is real. This is what is interesting. All the ogres I have are actually real. I mean, not real, but they come from.
Right. You didn't invent them. They were already there.
Yeah, those I did not invent. They are characters in. I may have used them differently, but they are characters in.
So there were ogres even before the British came.
Yeah. They were sort of that greed. That's what we call harm, that like grabbing things, even with grab even more than you need, even if you take it from others, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Sounds right. Okay, well, maybe this would be a good lead into some other kinds of questions. Joanne, would you like to take the lead here and maybe ask Ngugi a couple of questions?
Thank you. Yes. Throughout your life, you have been seriously politically active.
Sorry, before you go, let me just say one thing. For instance, today's technology, where we can get to the moon and other places, today's technology, there's no reason why we cannot eliminate poverty. There's no reason why anybody should be going back without a house, without a hospital bed, and without education, right? With technology, I can enable us to produce all these things. But everywhere in the world, you find the same phenomenon, poverty, people begging, unhousingness or whatever terms we call it. All those things are there, right? But technology is there, right? As never before in human history. Yeah. Anyway, that's part of my.
Actually, we're on the same page, because I was wondering, a man named Kenyatta is president of Kenya.
Right.
So he is named after the country, or the country is named after him?
No. Our first president of independent Kenya. Kenya, okay, let me just quite briefly. Kenya was a British settler colony.
Right.
Meaning it was settled by the British, and they had Europeans came and took over the land, just like America, New Zealand, Canada, and so on.
Right.
Yeah. Settler colony. Okay. What? Sorry. Can you say?
Okay. So my question about him was, he's.
Oh yes. Let me just explain. Kenyatta, the first president was Jomo Kenyatta. Yeah. Who died in 1978, December. Some other president came after him, but the current president we have is also called Kenyatta because he is the son of the original Kenyatta.
Right.
And Kenyatta was very flamboyant. At one time, when in the struggle for independence, he changed his name to Kenyatta.
Oh, so okay.
So Kenyatta becomes like a little Kenya.
Well, I was wondering about your leaving Kenya and the fact that the president of Kenya is among the top 20 of the world's wealthiest governors, presidents.
Yeah.
And so he clearly does not share your opinion about sharing the wealth.
I wish he did.
A lot of us.
Because I know there are many, it's quite clear that we can do better than what we are doing in the country, okay, right now. Again, when you go to visit Kenya, the skyscrapers are everywhere, sort of high-rise buildings everywhere, cars jam the streets and so on, but you wanted to look beyond the skyscraper and see the mass of and how.
So is that a holdover from colonial times where the few were allowed to reach the top?
Yeah, it's what I call normalization of abnormality. Yeah. The normalization of the abnormality of the colonial system, right?
Yeah.
Because the colonial system was based on a few not doing work, but feeding on thousands, okay?
Right.
Taking from, but they happen to be white, the few at the time, in the case of Kenya, okay, or this is why I put it. If you think of colonial as a pyramid in which on a few can fit the top of the pyramid, then a narrowing middle, then a broad base. Kenya was like that during the colonial times, with the people at the top of the pyramid were white. The ones who were in the middle were mixed up white and Asian. The bottom base was African. Now, independence comes, and what happens? The movement up and down the pyramid, the racial barriers to the movement up and down the pyramid were removed, more or less. But the structure remained the same. So no matter whether it's black or brown, as long as the structure is like that, only a few will be at the top of the pyramid. Then a few more in the middle and the base. Yeah.
Only now they're black?
Yeah, they may be black or brown.
So that's progress.
As long as the structure is, no, it's not progress. It's, well, of course, I mean, it's good. I mean, there was a time when, when I was growing up, you could never find a black policeman officer. You could never find a black immigration officer. Everything was white, brown, black, okay?
Mhm.
So the fact that there's a ratio barriers to the movement is being removed, that's, I mean, obviously important, yeah.
Mhm.
But the actual structural formation, that's what still remains is a problem, yeah.
And you were penalized with a year in jail for challenging some of that structure.
I've challenged some of the other thing which I challenge, especially in my writings, because I show the connection. If you look at the African continent, including Kenya, 90% of the resources are consumed by America and the West, right? 90% of the gold, of the diamonds, of cobalt, of uranium, of anything, 90%, okay? Oil, now consumed. But what we are told generally is that is Africa, is the West, which are donor to Africa. But I argue, no, it's the other way around. Africa has been an eternal donor to the West, okay? And this has been the case since slavery, slave trade, slavery, colonial resources to the present, okay? And if you just ask yourself, who mines gold in South Africa and diamond in Tanzania and cobalt and copper? Look at the people who actually own the mines. Who mines uranium in Africa? You know.
What about the Chinese in Africa? Are they not making?
Yeah. No, but Chinese are coming, but still the structure is still the same. That the resources the continent go and feed elsewhere, right? But the continent remains still, and we think of continent as needing help, donation from, whether from China or from Europe, does not matter. The key thing is that Africa has the resources, right, to be able to feed itself, clothe itself, and engage with other communities and nations on the basis of equal give and take. Yeah.
Thank you.
So this is maybe also what people mean by neo-colonialism, which is to say that, so long as the Western controlled companies are not deprived of their assets, which all the Western powers made very sure was the case as colonialism directly.
No, actually it's true. I'm not inventing this. If you look at the colonial era, the British East India Company owned India for 300 years or more, okay? Mm-hmm. You call it East India Company. Mm-hmm. The Kenya was owned by a British Imperial Company, right? So corporations actually, and all the kings and queens of Europe used to invest in corporations that dealt with slavery and slave trade, okay? All of them. Right. Now, so corporations were always behind colonialism, whether in America or Africa or New Zealand, the corporations, even slave trade and slavery was done by corporations, right? Yeah. So colonial ends, and we get the independence, but those corporations in one form or another still control the resources. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I want to talk about, Africa, of course, is a good example of that, but other places as well. But the key thing is cooperation.
But what are the Africans doing for themselves, or how, I mean, if they're allowing it?
That's why some of us are right. And to raise the consciousness to kind of, but
Sorry, sir.
yeah. Oh, I get excited. Now, no, this is, to me, this seems a struggle that we in Africa had to undergo. But in connection with this is the language issue, right? People may think that language is not connected to economic dominance, but it's very much to do with it because of what I call colonized language and the colonization of the mind. Let me just very quickly, and I'll be in 2 minutes, I'll try and say, when the English settled in Ireland and they could not conquer the Irish, you know what they did? They said the way to get at the Irish is through their language and their naming system. I mean, Spencer, the great, the poet with a contemporary, he said so, 1593. He wrote a book saying the only way to make the Irish forget who they are is through language and the naming system. Yeah. Now, we come to Wales. Welsh kids were beaten when they were caught in school speaking Welsh. They were made to carry, humiliated, and made to carry something called Welsh knot around their neck. When Africans were taken from the continent, enslaved to the new plantations, African languages were forbidden in the plantation. And some of the people were killed or murdered when they were caught speaking African languages. But European languages were left intact, right? It happened the same Native here in America. Native American language again suppressed in the same way. In fact, there's one called Captain Pratt, who formed one of the Carlisle School in, I think in Philadelphia, one of the first residency schools here. And he said the idea was to kill the Indian and save the man. That's Captain Pratt, okay? The same thing happened in New Zealand. Maori people were really, I mean, one talks of how they were beaten till blood, their butts bled bad when they were speaking Maori in school. So, and the same everywhere. The migration of the language of the colonized and glorification of the language of the colonizer. So when people here talk about the English only movement, it's part of the colonial mindset, right? Because there's no reason why languages cannot, you can have many languages, there's no problem, right? There's no language which is more of a language than any other. And language can talk to each other through translation or through people knowing more than one language. There's nothing that says that English language is inherently more so as a language than, say, Kikuyu, right? But the two can talk to each other. That's very different. But colonialism favors hierarchies. They want languages to relate in terms of hierarchy. My language is better than your language. Like say, my God is more of a God than your God, right? And can you think something more ungodly for anyone to claim that their God somehow or other is more of a God than any other God, okay? It's the same with the language. We have that tendency. And this has produced also people who believe in their mind that their own languages are not good enough, right? Yeah, you kind of a mindset, which I call colonization of the mind, right? among the elite. They identify progress and being with English or French or Portuguese or Spanish, yeah. And the same all over, yeah. So it's one thing to be, is another thing to see and do something about it. The success of the colonial process, quite frankly, was in making the people not be able to see, right? Yeah.
Invisible ogre.
So you are robbed and still call the robber your helper. that kind of thing, it changes the, yeah, yeah.
Okay, great. Well, we have another a guest here, Marilyn Long. Marilyn, would you like to ask Ngugi something thought-provoking? I'm sure you do.
Well, actually, the professor asked and answered the question that I was going to start with. And here are my notes. Best way to oppress people: remove their name, remove their language, use example of Irish and Maori. So I thank him for answering those questions for me. Now I'd like to talk about the thing that touched me the most about his work and reading about his background. His name has often been linked to the Nobel Prize, probability or possibility of Nobel Prize. And he was once quoted as saying, "I don't work for prizes. I work for the Nobel Prize of the heart." When people tell me over and over again that my work has impacted them.
Yeah.
And I thought that kind of distilled, what I've learned about this gentleman from reading. You gave a lecture, Professor, at UCI as part of a What Matters to Me and Why lecture series in 2013. And I had the privilege or pleasure of getting to watch that on YouTube. And first of all, I worked at UCI for almost 30 years. So I'm familiar with the environment, and it is flourishing and growing beyond anything I could have believed. But you read from your book, Dream in a Time of War. You read passages about your mother and your mother's influence on your love of language and your love of reading. And the quote that stuck with me: "My mother could not read nor write, but she was the one who sent me to school."
Yeah.
And I would like to have you, you probably don't have the book in front of you, but just in your own words, explain the love of language, the love of music, musicality and language that your mother gave to you as a gift.
Yeah. Can you see?
Yes.
It's called Seasons in Hippoland. And the writer is Wanjiko Ngugi, my daughter.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, Wanjiko is named after my mother, right? So she'll be, if my mother was alive, she'd be very proud of her daughter, yeah. But her name is Wanjiko. Why she important in my life? Because my mother could not read or write, okay? Yeah, but she's the one who sent me to school. And I remember this vividly, because I never dreamt I could go to school. So it was always in my mind, but never, ever said anything about it, because I knew it was not possible. It's not, I'd written it off my mind, okay? And it's my mother who looked at me one day, she just, I remember the words, "Would you like to go to school?" And in my novel, Weep Not Child, I open with that question. There's a character who asks, "Would you like to go to school?" And I try to capture the sense of not knowing what to say. Yeah, because was she joking? Might she change her mind? And so on. The other thing she did, which I thought, on looking back, I thought was amazing, was she supervised my homework. Now, and anyway, what she did was like this. She would ask me questions very sort of casually, very, somehow she had a sense of how I had done, right? Except that her own idea of how well you are done is on whether you are the top or not. So I remember once I written about this in my memoir, Dreams in a Time of War. When I come home first and I tell her, oh, I got 10 out of 10. And she asks, that's the best. So no matter what I did 100%, she only wanted to know whether if that was the best, then that's good, because to me there's nothing more than the best, right? Yeah. But I drew from that what she meant, if you tried your real best, really, yeah, but she wanted to make sure that I tried my best. But her putting it was, is that the best? All right. Is that the best you could have done? Right, yeah. So she really, every day now, I am grateful to her. The more I think of what she did, yeah, I'm very, very grateful to her, right, yeah. And that's why I'm very glad to see my granddaughter, my daughter, who is named after her, that's her granddaughter, is also making a name for herself in the writing world, yeah.
That's great. That's great. I wonder if we could go back a little bit to something you mentioned about, you made reference to the fact that Africans are, because of slavery, living all over the world. So we have Africans here in the United States, and we have, of course, in the Caribbean. And I wondered, since this language issue is so important to you, and you talk about the feeling that you're when you're taught that your language is third rate or second rate, and and that your own language, which I'm sure with your mother, right? She didn't speak English,
No.
right? So what is the implication of your thinking about the colonialization of the mind for those African origin people who never knew their mother tongue because they lost it in the Americas?
Not only is lost, it was forbidden. Yeah. So I think there are some people who were hanged when they were caught speaking their African languages. Anyway, the key thing for African Americans and Afro-Caribbeans, I'm actually, how shall I put this? I'm in awe of what they have done, really. And as many may know, I started, I'm very much impacted by Afro-Caribbean writings, like those of George Laming and so on. And of course, African-American writings, also have impacted me greatly. But let me put it this way. Why am I in awe, particularly of African-American speech? Let me try and explain what I mean. The African on the plantation, his languages were forbidden. But those of his European, overlord were never connected. The English were never linguistically disconnected with England. The Spanish, Spain, French, and so on, okay? The African denied his language, right? But at the same, inadequately, so to speak, it's not as if he was denied his African language and then he was taken to school and he was made a master of English and so on, So what does the African do? Forbidden his language, inadequate facilities in the other. He does something which is incredible. That he gets the rhythms of African speech, because you can't get rid of that, you know. Huh? And around it are English sounds. Okay. And what do they produce? First of all, the spirituals, that language which is invented, is made here, is invented here, is made in America, so to speak. What does it do? Okay, they produce spirituals under very difficult circumstances, that language. Okay? And some of the languages are still sung today. They are still very, very powerful. You know, I remember once in my own school, I remember hearing this, the spiritual of freedom. And before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home with my Lord and be free. Spiritual that inherently rejects slavery. Mm-hmm. He says, I'm not a slave. I am a slave, but I'm not a slave. As you're not making me a slave. But anyway, they produce spirituals. And then blues, the same language, blues, known all over the world. The same language system, jazz, all over the world. Now, I ask myself, over the same 300 years of there, tell me another language which has produced systems that have impacted the world, that have become global phenomenon, right? The African-American speech has produced global artistic expression which have been global in impact. But look also how African-American speech affected writers like Faulkner. Think of Faulkner and the musicality of his. This was taken directly. It's also impacted, you know. Mark Twain, characters again. Yeah. So when you look at to me, it's so amazing, you know, what the African-American speech has done. We should be proud of it. Okay. Now, not think of it as lesser than, or I mean, it's not, you know, right? So that to me, that's a great inspiration of what can be done. Okay. But let me explain one thing which people sometimes think that they think I reject English or French. And actually I don't. Yeah, I don't. But I say, you know, from your own language, you can know many other languages in the world. I know Gikuyu, I speak Swahili, and English, of course. And by the way, I'm a distinguished professor of English at UCI, okay? But I write in Gikuyu now, okay? One thing does not necessarily prevent the other, okay? It's the colonial system that made languages relate in terms of hierarchy.
Ngugi, we're going to have to stop now. I'm afraid we're running out of time.
That's my image of the languages thing.
Well, I think you answered my question very well. You did. You explained that the language of that the Africans were told they couldn't speak was translated into their music, and we still hear it. We still hear it today. So I'm afraid we're going to have to shut down. Concerned citizens thanks Ngugi wa Thiong'o for sharing his creativity and his wisdom with us. His writings are an inspiration to the colonized and the colonizer alike. And concerned citizens thanks you, our audience, for spending another hour with us. We look forward to bringing you another informative program next time.